In this video, we're looking at captioning and transcription, the WCAG success criteria 1.2.1 through to 1.2.5. Video and audio are wonderfully powerful tools in the arsenal of a learning designer or instructional designer, but it's really important that whenever we use them, not only are we using them in the right way for generating great learning experiences, but also that we're keeping in mind the basic accessibility requirements that these modalities add to the list. Now, it's important that we remember here that we're not just talking about disability when we talk about accessibility around video and audio. We're also talking about temporal and environmental accessibility considerations. Do people have headphones? Do they work in busy or loud environments? What time of day are they learning at, and what's going on around them at that time? All these considerations mean it's vital that we never overlook the accessibility requirements for video and audio. Let's start by kind of chiseling away one of those success criteria really early on, and that's 1.2.4, captions live. Now, as the name suggests, this only applies to live content. Think webinars, online conferences, Zoom calls, Google Meetups, all those kinds of things. Now, luckily, pretty much all those platforms I just mentioned, Zoom, Google Meet, Google Meetups, Google Hangouts, even Teams, has live transcription built in. It's as simple as one click to turn it on and then telling the audience it's available. The really good ones, specifically Zoom is what I'm thinking of here, will even send you a transcript of those closed captions at the end of the session that you can then share after the fact. Next up, I want to separate the last success criteria in this bracket, 1.2.5, or audio descriptions for pre-recorded content. Now, like the live captions, this is a AA standard, whereas the first three in the group, 1.2.1 through to 1.2.3, are all single A. They are kind of the base requirements. Audio description, though, is really important if within your video you've utilised a lot of detailed, important or technical visuals. Great examples of this can be when working in the engineering field, creating health and safety videos about specific equipment, or in the sciences and higher education areas where really the visuals are of vital importance. Audio description goes a long way to being able to help users who physically cannot see the screen, or due to an environmental or technological issue cannot see the screen, to still be able to utilise this medium. So let's focus on the three remaining success criteria. 1.2.1, audio only and video only pre-recorded. This is as simple as a requirement as you're going to find in the guidelines. Provide an alternative to video only and audio only content. Now, the easiest way to do this is to provide a transcript, a plain text version of whatever the video or audio contains. But the important thing to remember with a transcript is that it should be an exact representation of what was in the original. So, if there are multiple people speaking, they need to be identified in the transcript. If there is an important visual noted, then it should be described and potentially included as an image within the transcript. The user needs to get the same experience from reading the transcript as if they had listened to or watched the video. Now, the next one, 1.2.2, captions pre-recorded, are pretty obvious. You must provide captions with every video that has audio on it. Now, that has audio on it there is quite a key term. If the video is silent or just has some music in the background, then of course captions would be entirely unhelpful, and the alternative may even need to be something different. However, when creating captions, there are a whole range of things you need to consider. So, let's dig into the best practice around what makes for a great set of closed captions. So first things first, what goes into captions? Well, everything we just spoke about in the transcript should be going into the captions. Every word that is spoken should form the main body of your captions. It's really important that the captions make sense standalone, very similar to the kind of transcript element, because these can be read in lots of different ways. Probably the most common way though is that someone is going to be having the caption track in place of the audio track. So, thinking logically, if you have more than one speaker in your video, you need to identify who's speaking in the captions. You've probably seen this on TV, where the name appears in brackets and perhaps the colour changes as you go through. When it comes to what captions look like, there are lots of guidelines, but no hard rule. The important thing, as always, is that they're accessible. Captions should be easy to read. That means considering the typeface and font that you use. That means considering the background colour of the caption block, making sure that it's not on top of anything important in the video they need to be able to see for this to still be useful to them. Again, no hard and fast rules, but we all kind of know what's necessary. Don't use a silly display font, use something that's easy to read. The text in your captions should follow, well, all the normal rules for text. Capitalise words that should be capitalised, use the correct punctuation. People are going to be reading this along with your video, so you don't want to make it any more difficult to read than it would otherwise be. You want it to be as scannable and easily understandable as possible. And that leads us into thinking about how long a caption should be. Generally, best practice is considered that captions should never be more than 2 lines. That means if you're identifying a name, that's going to be the first line of the caption anyway, and you've got one more line. After that, of course, until someone else starts speaking, you can utilise up to 2 lines. It's also considered best practice to never let one line go over the length of around 32 characters. This pretty much aligns to the need for captions to not move faster than 180 words per minute. The final thing around timing to consider is that no caption should appear for less than 2 seconds. Finally, just as we identify speakers in standard brackets, you may also need to identify certain key sound effects. Now, this does not mean every time there's a sound effect. Let's be honest, a lot of sound effects are there as a little flourish from the video creator, but actually add nothing to the learning experience. But where that's not the case, where it is an important part of the story you're telling or the content you're training on, you need to include a description of the sound effect as short as possible, and we tend to mark those out in square brackets. So those are the best practices around captions, and before we really look into the practicalities of creating a set of captions quickly and easily, let's take a quick look at success criteria 1.2.3, audio description or media alternative, which simply states that a video with audio must have an alternative. You must be able to get that same information without watching the video. Now, of course, that could be the transcript as we previously discussed, or it could be an interactive alternative. It could be a downloadable alternative. The standards, as always, don't tell you what you have to do, they tell you what you need to achieve. Your way of providing that alternative is entirely up to you. You can bespoke that to the content you're trying to deliver, to the experience you're trying to create. With the success criteria fully examined, it's now time to get practical. First of all, we're going to look at how to create a caption track, export that as a sort of common caption file type known as SRT. Then we'll look at how we can import that into a couple of different authoring tools, and how we can also utilize that to create transcripts and how those transcripts can be displayed again in those different authoring tools. So here we are in Premiere Pro, more specifically in the audio tab, as I've just finished the final tweaks to this video. So now it's time to create a caption track. To start this process, we head over to the workspaces icon over here, click that and go down to captions and graphics. And here we see the captions and graphics panel. Specifically, we're looking for the captions and transcripts section. You can pretty much start on either one. I just work on captions the whole time because I can do the transcription from here as well. First things first, during the audio section I made sure to tag in my audio tracks what was dialogue, what was music. So now what I can do is focus on transcribing the sequence. Make sure I've not selected any one bit of content because I want the whole thing, and then click on transcribe sequence. Here, it will pick up on the sequence name, make sure it's looking at the right thing, the length, it'll ask you what language it's in. If, like me, you're in the UK, you definitely want to change to English UK. And then it'll ask you whether or not you just want to look at the tagged dialogue clips or the audio on the whole lot. And do you want it to mix, or do you want to look at a particular audio track? So I'm going to say just do the full mix, look at everything that's in there, and I would like it to recognize when different speakers are talking. With those simple selections made, I can hit transcribe, and the Adobe Cloud software is now going to basically upload a version of that audio to a secure cloud, transcribe it, and pass that back down to my system. Now that the transcript has loaded though, you can see it's organised it under the speaker name for me. It's identified that I'm the only person speaking in this video, even though there are different clips taken at different times that I know sound slightly different. What I can now do is click into here, edit speakers, and then edit speaker 1 to be my own name. The next step is to read through this transcript. Ultimately, whilst I've found the Adobe transcription tool to be pretty accurate, it's still an automated transcription tool. I would never totally trust it. So as I read through, I'm thinking about, is this the right word? Is this the right spelling of the right word? Thinking of there, and there in that particular scenario. Does the punctuation make sense? Is this flowing correctly? And really just making sure that the transcript is perfect before I use it to generate the caption file. The thing I'll do is download this transcript as it is. You've got 3 little dots in the corner here, you can click, and then you can retranscribe, you can export the transcript. Now that will actually download as a transcript file, which if you happen to be using a bit of software that uses them is great, but very few pieces of software in my experience do use them. So instead, I tend to download them as a text file. Doing this takes a few moments, but most importantly, drops a text file down on, in this case, your desktop, and if you open it, you see a very simple direct copy of what you see here. So that's how simple it is to get our hands on a transcript. But that's only part of what we're here to do. We want a closed captions file. Luckily, now that we have timecodes and transcripts, we can very quickly and easily create a set of closed captions. There's a little closed caption button just here. I can press that and Adobe will give me a whole host of options. So I'm pretty much always going to want to create from the transcript. I tend to just use the subtitle default because I'm not going to end up using any of the kind of display qualities we look at here in Adobe. Here it defaults to 42 characters, so I might knock that back down to the 32 we were discussing earlier. There we go. Minimum duration in seconds, 3. I prefer 3 to 2. I like there to be that little bit more of a gap. And any sort of forced gap between them, I tend to set that to be 0 frames. You can also see here, decide whether you want single or double lines. I often prefer single lined captions, if I'm honest, but you could just as easily have double line captions. There's no problem with that, as we discussed before. The important thing is that we're not looking at any captions going below 2 seconds, and we're not looking at captions going excessively longer than 32 characters. So, with that in mind, we can now create our caption file. Now you can see what this has done here is now we've got our transcript over on the transcript tab and our captions in our captions tab. Nice and simple. As with before, we can edit these, we can merge them, we can split them if we decided we were unhappy with something. So assuming we're not burning the captions in, we can now come up to here and export an SRT file. With these, for instance, I'll put closed captions to ensure that we're not going to have problems, and then hit the save button. With that done, we have our SRT file and we can now head over to an authoring tool and import it along with our video. So with the video added to the storyline slide, it's time to add our captions. This is super easy as we already have the SRT file. We can just click on the video, hop over to the options tab on the ribbon and click the import option in the captions section. I saved it to the desktop, so we'll just hop over there, double click that, and it has now imported those captions. To make sure they are all okay, we can go into the edit captions option. And you'll see here that it has taken everything we just created in Premiere Pro and created this lovely set of captions. By default, it's brought in the same line length and word limits that we set in there, so that's all fine. This is a good opportunity just to double check that everything's fine now it's been imported into a new system, but the biggest benefit is that SRT is a fairly universal standard these days. You can rely on it to bring information over so long as you thoroughly checked what you were doing in Premiere Pro. So what about the transcript? Well, when it comes to transcripts, you want to make them as easy to access as possible, and for me that means having it right here. If the user's viewing the video here on this slide, they should also be able to opt for the transcript version here on this slide. My default for doing this in recent times has been to simply add an optional layer that the user can access through a simple accessibility icon in the top right hand corner of the screen. To give you an example of how quick and easy that is to build, let's do it right now. I start by adding a button. In this case, I'm going to use a marker just because they're readily available. Let's go with that one and let's drop it over here in the corner. This is obviously a bit small, but it will give you an idea. We'll use that marker as the button to access the transcript. The transcript itself is simply going to be a layer, new layer here, we'll call it transcript. And in order to make this run as easily as possible, I'm actually going to make this a dialogue layer. That means it's going to lock off everything underneath it, pause the timeline, hide other layers, really just make sure that this is the only thing that's going to be seen. We want to keep this layer as simple and as plain as possible. For this, what I tend to do is start by adding a simple plain background. In this case, let's just add a shape. Next up, we're going to want to give this page a title, so let's literally just call it the video transcript. We're going to open up our text document from earlier, select all and copy, minimize that, insert a new text box over here, and we're going to paste all of that in there. That's all in as body text. It probably doesn't need to be quite as large though. Now, one thing you will need to do when doing this is tidy up some of the line spacing. So let's move this over to the side for now, because you can see immediately this is going to be quite long even when we close those spacings in. Now, you could, for instance, have a lot of clicks here, but what I actually tend to do is add a scrolling panel at this point. So let me add a scrolling panel just there. That's now in place. I can then come over to that and snap that to fit there. This really simple scrolling panel goes a long way in reducing the number of clicks the end user has to do just to be able to read the transcript. All the time codes are here, the speaker names are here. Obviously you can adjust the line spacing to be whatever you want, you can adjust your font to be whatever you want, your design and colouring to be anything that you want. Most importantly though, we do need to make sure that we add back in a marker. You might want some form of close button. Let me drop that over in the corner here. Again, I probably wouldn't use markers for this in the real thing. They're just a little bit too small, but they give you a good idea here. So here we would simply add a trigger that's going to say hide this layer when the user clicks marker 1. And back on the video, we might add a trigger to this that says show layer transcript when user hits that marker. So now when we load that as a preview, what we'll see is the video starts playing. That's great. We can then click on this little marker icon here, and because it's a dialogue, it's going to pause that timeline down there. We're not hearing the video in the background, we're not seeing the video in the background, but I am able to just scroll through this transcript at my leisure and read it, and then when I'm ready, close that and go back to the video. What you may want to consider is whether or not you need two buttons here, one to go back to the video, one to close it, or if someone views the transcript, are they going to automatically skip the video? You can make those decisions based on, specific user testing for your audience or your preference, depending on what you already know about your audience. The important thing is that the transcript is right there with the video. It's not hidden away, and really importantly, it's not created as downloadable PDFs. So next up, we are taking a look at how we implement a video, transcript and closed captions in Evolve by Instructional. Here you can see I've added a media component to an empty block and article and uploaded the same video. Just a quick reminder that Evolve does have a relatively small size limit on all videos, so make sure you compress them using Handbrake before you send it up. Here you can see you've got a whole bunch of video controls. For instance, you could hide the player controls, not great for accessibility. Autoplay, not great for accessibility. Loop video, not great for accessibility. Hide play button, definitely not good for accessibility. But here you could also add a poster image. That can be good so people know what they're doing. But unlike Storyline, right here you get the option to create a transcript button. So here we could, for instance, see transcript. We could then open up our transcript file once again, copy all of this, minimize that, paste it into there. Our transcript is now there. Do we want it to open in a pop-up? So by default in Evolve, the transcript gets placed under the video and expands downwards. If you prefer for it to be a pop-up, you can make it a pop-up. That's entirely kind of a UX choice. The important thing is that there will be a transcript. We can then go up to our section selector here in the editing menu, drop that down and move over to subtitles. You can see there is also one for audio description. You can in fact add audio description tracks and multiple audio description tracks here in Evolve. The accessibility options, especially around media, I must say, in Evolve are second to none. So let's go over to subtitles and we can click here to add some subtitles. We just add the file like we would any other. Let's navigate over to where we left the file. There it is. Quick reminder at this stage that Evolve is one of the platforms that does need a VTT file. So when we downloaded the SRT from Adobe Premiere Pro, all I did was come over here to happyscribe.com and use their free conversion tool, SRT to VTT, uploaded the SRT, selected the file type that I wanted, specifically VTT, but you could also do docx, text or PDF, although I'm not sure why any of those would be useful for a caption file, and then converted it. They also have a really handy FAQ down here that just outlines the differences between the two file types if you are so interested because you're a nerd like me. But we now have all of that uploaded and we are ready to take a look at what we've created. So let's do a quick preview, load up our Evolve course, and we can now see in this simple course example we have our video. It doesn't autoplay, it has a play button. Because I've not uploaded a poster, it's just picked the opening frame of the video, which is probably not ideal here. As you can see, I should have uploaded the poster image, but in my own leisure now I can hit the play button and I can turn the captions on down here. And we can see they work straight away, but also I cannot be watching that, hit the transcript button and come down here and view the full transcript all in one place. Now, if I had, of course, selected under the transcript section to make the transcript a pop-up, that one simple button there, I could then come back to here, refresh the page, hit see transcript, and it would now be a pop-up with a little close button as well. The important thing there, of course, is just making sure you use the version of the transcript tool that offers the least friction to your users. Regardless of what authoring tool you use, it is on us as L&D professionals to make our content accessible. Captioning, transcriptions, and where necessary audio descriptions take very little time, very little effort, and really are an essential part of using video and audio as modalities for learning. I hope you found this video useful. Please let me know down in the comments, first of all, what you're taking away, or if you do something differently, if you think there's a way to improve my workflow. But also, if there's another accessibility topic that you would like me to cover, let me know. I'm keen to make more of these videos if they're useful for you. If you'd like to support the channel, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. If you'd like to support us and everything else that we do, including the IDTX conferences, which are due for March 2023,